ASU's defensive resurgence in 2024 was spurred by several new faces. And that included the man who became the de facto quarterback of the defense, linebacker Keyshaun Elliott, who quickly became a team leader and the one wearing the in helmet communications device after his transfer from New Mexico State. It was only fitting as he was a former accomplished high school quarterback before becoming one of the Big 12's best defenders. Now, with a year of experience under his belt in the defensive scheme, he's poised to make a major leap and help the Sun Devils build upon last year's playoff run. On this episode, Keyshaun and I discuss his football journey, his growth in the defense, the Werewolves, the hardest hits he's ever delivered, his golf game, and so much more. So let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Keyshaun Elliott. All right, Keyshaun, we're going to start off with a question from your teammate, Keith Abney. He wants to know who you think is the best basketball player on the Sun Devil football team.
Oh, shoot. I mean, we just had that little get together over at Dilly's, so we really got to see. I'd say it's up in the air between either Sam or JT. Both of them really competitive guys. That can also take it to the basketball court. But Sam's got a good shot on him, and JT's a good playmaker.
Of course, JT has the advantage, I believe, having hoops in his DNA with his brother. Where do
Yeah.
you stack up on that list?
What's that?
Where do you stack up on that Hooper list?
Oh shoot! I always tell the guys I'm retired. I mean, I gave it up after high school, but I don't know. I would say like if I really got into it and really you know gave it a try, I'd say top 10 on the team.
And I also believe that your other sport of choice is golf. Is that how you like hitting the links?
Shoot, when I was over in New Mexico, that's really all we had to do was there's 3 courses, so you're going out to on every weekend playing golf. I got pretty good at it, and then you come over here, you got Scottsdale, I live down in Mesa, so there's a lot of things to do outside of golf now. So I don't play as much, but whenever I get the chance to, I like to go out on the course.
And I've heard some stories that Kenny is kind of a madman out there on the course. Have you played around with him? I heard that he almost played an entire round using just a putter for every time.
That doesn't surprise me. No, I haven't got the chance to golf with him, but I bet that'd be a good time.
Of course, you guys just wrapped up spring ball, and over the course of those 15 practices, and when you look back, where do you see your game kind of having elevated, and perhaps the performance of the linebackers as a whole?
I think personally for me, is I've really got, our defense, down to the hand. So, I'm not out there thinking, I know I told you this, a couple weeks ago. I'm not out there thinking so much about scheme. How can I improve my game, to the skill point, get better every day. But again, that also comes from me not out there thinking. And like I said before, looking back, my freshman year, first year in college, that was something that I was doing was, still learning the defensive scheme. And, my freshman year, that's really all I was doing. I wasn't really out there, able to take it, to the skill levels that I needed to. But then my sophomore year, you saw, the jump in, the stats and everything, my film, tremendously different. Just because my confidence level is, and I think that's something, as a player is once you learn the scheme and you're confident, you're going to go out there and play your best game. So, that's something I'm looking forward to next year is, I got Coach Ward's defense, down. So, now I'm ready to go play, 100% confidently. So I'm pretty excited for next year.
Yeah, and talking to him, he said that the second year is like when he sees that the players really understand the why of the defense and that translating and just especially with so many of those guys but I think like the top four in that group all entering the second year, whether you Zyrus, Jordan, and even a youngster like Martell, just so collectively understanding that, and so does it obviously just seems to just kind of result in smoother, faster football.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially in the linebacker room, we have a process, we hold ourselves to a high standard, which, we're really caught on towards the end of the year. And that's when we started seeing, our more successful games come out. But, this offseason has been good for all of us, trying, pick up the younger guys, say like, hey, you guys are about to, we need you guys next year. Like you guys are gonna have to step up and play. I think because we have me, Jordan, and Crook or Zyrus in there, there's so many older guys and veterans in the room that, it's, I mean, put it the best I could say is, it's exciting to come to work every day, come and compete with those guys. You look forward to it, and I'm excited for it.
So of course, when you look compared to maybe this time last year, coming off of spring ball, a team that was coming off of a difficult year, looking to rebound. Now this year, reigning champs, Kenny doing the mind games of playing "We Are the Champions" 1,000 times during spring ball. How have you seen maybe kind of the program culture evolve over the course of the year? In between that, having the success that you guys were able to have on the field.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, during the off season is, kind of forgetting what was in the past, like we did last year at this point, nobody was really bringing up, 3-8 or 3-9, whatever they went, in the off season, it's what can we do every day, put ourselves in the best position, to win. And, even this year, having it coming off a successful year, that's not something you want to bring up every year because that's where you see people get complacent. So I think there's a lot of returning guys, obviously the culture and, that work ethic that we had last year is rolling over, and now it's how can we build upon it and get better?
So, at what point, being a newcomer to this team last year, and at what point did you know this team or think that this team was legit? That like, okay, this is a team that you can make some noise and make a run.
I would say in summer workouts, our Fridays, we get after it, and at the beginning it was kind of ups and downs with how we were doing and what Coach Joe was putting us through. But towards the end of the summer, you really saw the guys come to work every day. They knew the task at hand, and we knew how to accomplish it. I think a lot of those workouts that we went through and that Coach Joe put us through, really, put us in position to have a successful year.
So, when you look back upon that 2024 season, what were some of that your favorite moments throughout the entire ride, whether they were on or off the field?
I would say my favorite moment last year was probably our first win versus Wyoming. It's always a good thing to get that first win. You learn what it takes to win. All that work we did in the off season, fall camp, springs, and just to see it come out like that versus Wyoming, we came out jumping and off to a hot start, and then rolling over to the next week and Mississippi State. It was a good start of the year. So that whole start of the year, even when we did take our first loss, we were learning as a team and building upon as a team how to win and lose. So I think that those were probably some of the most unforgettable moments of my football career.
So of course, you guys were able to not just put forth a a great season, get a lot of wins, bring home a conference championship, but you also activated the Valley as Kenny had said from day one, and seeing the fan base, the sold out stadiums, the hundreds of fans turn out to greet the buses as you guys were leaving the facility. What was some of the most personally rewarding aspects for you of just kind of reigniting and activating this fan base?
Yeah, I think even shoot, I'll say this yesterday. I went out and golfed down at a course down in Mesa, and the cart guy, he's like, "You play football?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I play for ASU." And he's like, "Man, let me get a picture." And it's crazy because I was out golfing last year even more than I was. And I mean, people would ask me what I do. Of course, I tell them I play for ASU. There was nobody asking to take pictures, nobody asking for autographs. Now you really feel it. You can feel the fans, coming along. They want to be a part of it. It's a great thing. And I think that's a good thing about living in a big city is when you're winning, there's a lot of people that want to come with you.
Where do you feel that you improve the most on the field from game one through the Peach Bowl?
I think, the fundamentals, the little things and the details, and everything it takes to be a linebacker, whether it's from the IQ or, the skill factors. But I think overall, like my game improved, from everything. That's what I was talking with Coach Cooper about is just what I need to do, going forward in this off season is, just, get 1% better on everything that I can do, from pass rush to footwork to, pass drops, everything. But I think that's, something I really, when I go back and look at my film, and comparing it from my sophomore year, I look like a linebacker out there from footwork to my reads to my pass drops.
Of course, one of the new elements was the helmet communications. Now that you have a full season of data and experience in that, what kind of impact did that helmet communication, that leap forward in technology, have for you in the defense?
I think it's good. You get to communicate, with your coach more, especially with Coach Coop. He's really good at giving us the right information that we need. So and enable for me to, relay that to the whole defense, get us on the same page. I think it's a, great step in the game, and, allowing us college athletes to have that on our helmets. But overall, I really liked it. I would say, yeah, it's just overall a great thing to have.
So I want to go back to the start of your football journey. I know that your uncle played in the NFL, and for a number of years. But how was your entry into the sport? What initially got you into football?
Shoot, I think I started playing in 4th grade. I've played at a young age, but it was nothing like really organized football. But I started playing in 4th grade. Kind of fell in love. I was a defensive player originally. Outside linebacker when I was in little league, and then I didn't really start playing quarterback till I was in 8th grade because I was always overweight. So then I fell in love with quarterback position. Thought I was gonna be a quarterback for the rest of my life. And then it was like my sophomore year, my high school head coach pulled me into his office. I had no intentions of going to college and playing football. I was like, it's probably out of my league. Like, he asked me, where are you going to want to go play college football? I was like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, I never thought about it. And he's like, well, I got some people wanting to talk to you. And then that's when, the recruiting all started. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of a, roller coaster ride going from a small school in Richmond, Missouri, population of 6,000 people. Now I'm here in Tempe, Arizona. So, it's a great journey. I wouldn't take anything back. It was a long ride, but, I'm happy where I'm at.
Do you remember, way back in the day, your first big play on the field, whether outside linebacker, and then, fast forward a couple of years, your first touchdown pass when you finally made the transition to quarterback?
Oh, first touchdown pass. Yeah, I think my first touchdown pass was my freshman year of high school. It was we didn't have a good year, but I was playing receiver at the time because I wasn't starting my freshman year until later, and then it was off a double pass. So I caught the pop screen as an X receiver and threw it over to the H. It was a touchdown. But yeah, that was a good journey. But defensively, I'd say my first memory defensively, probably take it back to Little League when I won my first defensive MVP. It's a good year. Just playing football at Little League, you're just out there tackling people. So that was a good memory. I won't forget that.
So when did you first know that you were really good and had a future? Was it when your coach you mentioned that there's some schools that are showing interest, or did you kind of maybe have an inkling that like, okay, maybe if if I put myself to this, I could go some places?
Yeah, I think when I kind of realized I was probably going to into my junior year of high school. We went to like these team camps. So you do like 11 on 11 versus other teams. Some of them were big teams, some of them small. We were a small school, so we kind of got overlooked, especially in the recruiting standpoints. But I think when I went up there and I was able to compete and have a good camp versus some of the guys that are getting recruited by these big schools, it's kind of like, okay, I can play with these guys. Like, now it's just like, what can I do to get these offers that they're getting?
How does your background, playing quarterback, and I believe in your career you had something like 130 touchdowns accounted for.
Yeah.
How does that experience maybe help make you a better defender, knowing kind of what the opposition is kind of looking for in any given play?
Yeah, I think, as a quarterback, the biggest takeaway I have from being that was, what everything you can get pre-snap is going to help you. So all the cues that the offense is giving you, as a quarterback, you're looking at, the safeties, the corners, the linebackers, all their alignments. Are they showing pressures? Are they one high, two high, or is the man? I think as a linebacker, you're really looking to kind of see if the tackle, if he's got his foot back, is he kick stepping the pass, or as the receivers cutting their splits down to run over routes, or are they getting these special formations to run the ball, or are they passing the ball? But I think the IQ point from being a quarterback now to a linebacker is the biggest thing that's helped me is I can learn fast, study things, and the film review is really good too.
You ever miss playing on the offensive side?
Yeah, all the time. I'll always give offensive guys crap. You guys' jobs are easy. You guys are running the plays. You guys look at a board, run it, and then defense, we have to react. So we have no clue what you guys are running. But yeah, I definitely miss it. But I love playing linebacker too.
After the success there, that one day in camp that Clayton had, he even was working with the receivers and some drills. You ever maybe thought about bugging Arroyo a little bit and get
Oh,
you a special package?
No, the quarterback days are over, and I accept that, I don't wanna learn the playbooks, I don't wanna go, what they have to go through, those guys are working hard every day, and, I see it, but no, it's not something I wanna do.
So of course, the Texas Tempe pipeline's been flowing strong. Of course, historically, ASU has got a lot of players out of California, and those two profiles, are among the two states in the country that produce the most nationally and have their certain characteristics. What is a Missouri player? What does it bring? What are some of the things, the traits that a guy coming up from the Show Me State that brings to a football field?
Yeah, I think, Midwest football is a little bit different. You get more, hard-nosed, bigger guys that come from the Midwest, especially when you're looking at offensive linemen. But yeah, I think that's one of the biggest trends in college is you see, all these recruits following other recruits. They're all going to go around the same place, be around each other. I think that's why the Texas to Tempe pipeline is so big here at ASU. But yeah, there's not too many Midwest cats out in, the West Coast from uh, Missouri. So it's different. I think I might be, one of three guys from the Midwest, but we bring a different, mindset here. I think we work hard. We bring hard nosed football too.
How much of an adjustment was it, making that jump up from Conference USA and New Mexico State to the Big 12 and Power Four football?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's talent everywhere. I'd never overlook a smaller conference team. Even when we played Wyoming, like we respected those cats, not because of the tradition they had there or the past that they had, but there's good football anywhere you go. But I think one of the biggest things is the rosters. There's more consistent talents from the depth chart. You could have a really good player and your starting linebacker could be really good, and then your third string linebacker could be really good, which is what you saw, in our room. But I think that's the biggest thing, And then you always got to come every day has got to be consistent. You have to work every single day because that next man up mentality. He's ready to come there and take your job any day.
Would have been the biggest differences from life in Las Cruces to Tempe.
Oh, man, Las Cruces was just like a small city. I mean, you didn't like I said, you didn't have really much to do besides golf. Here, I mean, you can do anything. There's always people going around. I'm always saying like, man, why is there traffic? And I was like, I forget I live where people want to come vacation at. So it's great, man. There's a lot of things to do out here. I love it here. It's true. Something I would retire at for sure.
Of course, you're not just excelling on the field, but I believe you're also a scholar baller. And what's that balance like for you? And just the demands and the rigors of being a student athlete, as well as a student that excels in the classroom.
Yeah, my mentality is I just want to be the best at anything I do. So when it comes to school, it's like I gotta do this, but I'm not just gonna do it. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna try hard, and I'm gonna try to get the highest grade that I can. So I think just my mentality and how I approach everything, really rolls onto the classroom as well.
Are there any linebackers that you model your game or certain parts of your game after?
Oh yeah, I mean, shoot, now today's game definitely Fred. I feel like we're pretty built similar. He's kind of a same playmaker that I am. Sideline to sideline guy. Really, he can do anything. So I always try to have Coach Silver, load up his film on Catapult, and I like to watch it and just see what he's doing, how he reacts, and his footwork, and how he uses his hands.
No matter whether it's college or high school, maybe even earlier, what's the hardest hit you've ever leveled on a ball carrier?
Oh, shoot, I mean, there's a lot of tackles. I would probably say it's part of my junior year. Junior year of high school, I was playing linebacker, and they had threw like a screen out to the receiver, and he had made a man miss, and then he didn't even see me, and I'm coming from the side full speed, just helmet to helmet, ear hold him, and he was laying there for a good minute, not moving. So yeah, I knew he felt that one, but yeah, that's probably the hardest one. I mean, shoot, yeah, there's a lot, but I'd say that's the biggest one.
Who's the hardest hitter on this current Sun Devil team? I know, like probably your teammate at New Mexico State, Ghost, is going to get a lot
Yeah,
of run, but who's in that mix?
yeah, I think that's a no doubt. You see Ghost play, and the mindset that he comes with every day. He's really playing downhill, and he's at the safety position, so he's 12 yards back, coming full speed, and with his head down. You don't want to make contact with that. And you look back at last year, and you see some of those hits that once he lays contact, you're going down, and you're gonna feel it. So yeah, Ghost gets that one.
What's it like? Just obviously, you guys had that chemistry from the previous stop, but also just knowing that behind playing behind you is a guy that has that much range, and that ferocity.
Right, yeah. This is going on my 3rd year playing with him, so, yeah. I think he's a great player, he comes to work. Um, he makes me confident, knowing I have him behind me. He's a well tackler, he can defend. His game's getting better every day. But, I think the biggest thing that we have from coming from the same school is just our relationship. We're close. We come from a school that, also preach, work hard. You want to win, you got to work. So, I think the culture that we brought over from New Mexico State's good too.
Of course, the linebackers here now like to call themselves the Werewolves. What's the origin of that moniker?
We walked in one day last year and, just kind of talked about it. And, at first we all thought it was like a joke, but now, we look at it as like, that's who we are. We're werewolves. I don't really like talking it too much about it to the media because, we like to keep it in house of what we do, our mindset. But, that means a lot to us as linebackers. And, especially for the guys coming in too, kind of even Isaiah, we're preaching, what it takes to be a werewolf. You got to come to work every day with your heart, with your nose down. What can you do every day to get consistently better?
And of course, leading that room, AJ Cooper. What has it been like just working with him now heading into your second year, and his role in your on field development?
Yeah, I think he keeps us going, and as a linebacker group as a whole, he really lays the foundation for us. Make sure that we're prepared for every day. Whether it's a 10 period practice, we're gonna be out there working. 30 minutes before those guys are. We're every day, and I think that's something that we caught on to. Mid season was the process that he takes, and he really lays that process down for us. We have to trust him. Put us in the best position possible.
How have you seen your evolution as a leader? Of course, on the council a season ago, and just a veteran of the college game. How do you see your role as a leader? Heading into this 2025 season.
Yeah, I think it's good, but that all comes off the relationships that I built with the guys. I can go up to any player on the team and, talk to them, not even just about football, off the field things too. But I think leadership comes with, the relationships. When I came here last year, it was, kind of hard, be put in that leadership, role, somebody that looks up to you when you don't have a relationship with them. So that was something I was working on last year, how many relationships can I build with these guys on the team? So looking forward to now next year. I know I can be a confident leader and somebody that the team can look up to.
And watching you guys down the stretch last year, and throughout spring practice this year, you and Jordan out there just having such range and such instincts, and of course both in the second year just playing so much faster. What is it like just playing with that first team defense with Jordan by your side?
Yeah, it's great. Crook's a great player too. He's one of the hardest workers on the team. He's always trying to get better. But we have a good time. Playing at the ones defense. You're looking across the ball at the other side. You got Sam Levitt at quarterback. You got JT at receivers, Sif at running back, and then O line that's got a bunch of guys too. You're playing against one of the best offenses in the Big 12. So I think as a defense, we're having one of the greatest looks that we could have in spring ball. So I just can't wait to see what we can do to take it forward to the fall.
Of course, a lot of guys that are going to be heading to their final year of college football. And what are your thoughts on kind of the young backers in that room? Some of the next generation that guys are going to really kind of pick up the slack. And, obviously being play a role in 25, but in 26 and beyond.
Yeah, I'm confident with him. Shoot, I think a lot of us, if not all of us, could go out there and play. And, if we had a game next week. So I think that's again with what Coach Cooper's doing. He's coaching every one of us like we're gonna be starting next week. So I mean that's the linebacker group. Is we're a great group. We're all coming to work every day. We're gonna do what it takes. If not more. So.
Heading into the summer months where a lot of the hard work and ultimately the things that will bear the fruit in during the season. What are some of the things you're going to be working or you're going to be focusing on during this summer work?
Obviously, I want to, Coach Joe will, his workouts that he does will, put you in the best shape of your life, which I am in the best shape of my life, most athletic I've been since ever. So, but outside of the lifting and conditioning, I just want to improve my game, overall, everything, add to the toolbox, get 1% better every day.
with so many pieces back, a lot of guys that, decided to forego the NFL and come back, and, guys that in their final year. Is there a bit of a kind of like a, now or never feel to this team, knowing that, everybody can, so much of this team is back in prime to, win another Big 12 title, but and also, make another deep playoff run?
Yeah, I think you can feel it. There's especially on the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of veterans on the side of the ball. Everybody's hungry, whether it's their last year or, even the freshmen, they're hungry to win too. I think that's just the culture that we have here is, you come here to work and you come here, and if you want to win, you got to come to work. So I think, yeah, having a lot of veteran guys that, are on their last year, definitely brings that, mentality of like, all right, we have to do it this year. Like, can we do it? Let's do it.
Does anything change, or and if so, like how much does it change? Going from a team that was, a hunter, now like you guys have the bullseye on your back. I mean, you're going to be probably the, again, the, reigning champs, but probably, the team that everybody has marked on their count on their schedule. What changes, going from like that, the hunter to the hunted?
Yeah, I think when that comes the case, you got to really just focus on yourself, and that's what Coach Dillingham's preaching. Is we don't need to worry about what the media is saying or what other teams are thinking about us, or all that stuff that people get caught up in a lot of times. But like I said, we really have to focus on us this off season and going into next year. Don't get caught up in all that.
Ultimately this fall, out there on the field at Mount America Stadium, what do you want the fans in those stands to see from you out there on the field?
Shoot, man, they're going to see a much more confident player, a guy that's playing a lot faster last year. He can cover sideline to sideline, making a lot of tackles. So.
I'd like to thank Keyshaun for taking the time to talk with me for this episode. Make sure you are subscribed to Speak of the Devils on the podcast platform of your choice for more great sit-down series episodes all off season long. And be sure to follow me on all things social media at BDenny29.